Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Heartstopper, Season 1, Episode 1, Meet. M-E-E-T, not M-E-A-T, just to clarify for those who have not seen the show. In this episode, we get introduced to a cast of mostly lovely characters. Mostly. One of the guys gets dealt with. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Cindy for commissioning this entire series. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one season. And I don't, I'm not sure if they've mentioned if they're going to be doing any more, because at the moment, things are in sort of a weird place where we've got the strike going on with writers and actors. And I say writers and actors, it's everybody in the industry, you know, everybody who works behind the scenes as well. And there's a lot of things that are sort of in a weird spot because people don't know what the future holds, whether or not they're going to get to do more. So I am really curious whether or not this is the kind of show that ends in such a way that you'd be perfectly happy for it to be one season, or if you are just like, no, come on, there has to be a second one, you know? Oh shit. The second season came out. I did not expect that it was already out because I only heard about this show from Sydney. Sorry. That's my friend who's coming over tomorrow. My maid of honor, from Cindy a few months ago. So I thought the show was like pretty new, but damn, season 3 is already confirmed. Oh, Cindy says because they're in Britain, they're not impacted by the strikes. I didn't even think of that. That makes sense. Cloak says it's based on the graphic novels. I did not know these were graphic novels either. You guys are so informative. It's a really good thing that I have a chat open for these recordings because I would be like just lost, you guys. And speaking of which, if you're new to Spoil Me, I am normally what I do for Unspoiled. There's a co-host who has either never seen it or they've seen the whole thing. And one of us knows people's names and can help the other remember. But since I'm on a Spoil Me and it's just me, that means that I have to try and remember everybody's names by myself. And that can be easier than you would expect depending on what the property is. And then there are times where it's like, I don't know why, impossible. And I have such a hard time. So just, you know, thank you guys for being here and be ready to feed me names because other than like some of our mains, I don't remember them. I have the IMDb for this episode up, so that's helpful, but there's not necessarily always going to be an easy way to jump over there and check that while I'm talking. So, but anyway, I'm really excited because this episode, the word that comes to mind for this first episode is darling. This is just precious. Like, it's a universe in which it's not like completely without its flaws or anything, but for the most part, we've got a population at this school who seems like pretty chill, like dealing with homophobia. We've got apparently like a transphobic teacher who I don't know if we've met, but that student is at an all-girls school now. So it's a whole different situation. And Cindy says, "Oh, I'm so glad I was low-key afraid you wouldn't like it." That's always the thing. And I will say this, barring like 2 properties ever that I have been commissioned to cover, my listener base is pretty solid about commissioning shit that is good. The one thing that I really was not super on board with, and they wound up dropping off on paying for episodes because they could tell I was not into it, was Iron Druid, which was way back. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else, but like for the most part, oh no, I know, the Shadow and Bone series. Six of Crows, amazing. King of Scars, fantastic. But the first series she did, Shadow and Bone, was pretty rough to get through. But yeah, mostly I've had great luck. And Spoil Me has been a wonderful way for me to like get introduced to new material that otherwise, if people recommended it, I would be like, oh yeah, I'll put that on the list. And that list is so absurdly long that who knows when I would ever get around to anything, you know? But it's really nice because I'm forced to watch it for work, but then because I'm covering it alone, I also have the possibility of, if I love it, then covering it with a co-host at some point and making it into a whole thing. So I'm finding a lot of unexpected benefits to having this like solo show. Excuse me, guys. I feel like my voice sounds hoarse, and usually by the end of 3 episodes, it's fine. I talk like 3 hours with Rashawn, but maybe it's allergies today. So, all right, let's get started and get into the actual meat of the episode. That is MEAT. That's the one I meant that time. So, first thing I want to mention is the soundtrack to this show is straight bangers. And I really appreciate it because as an old, it's very hard for me to get to hear music outside of the sphere of music that I was in with high school and college. As so many of us do, you get older and you fall out of the zeitgeist and you lean towards listening to music that reminds you of your prime when you were young and full of energy and carefree. And so you keep listening to the same shit, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that falls into this like temptation of going, there's no good new music, which is just straight up false. But it's hard to put yourself out there, especially when new artists are very young. And as an old, it can be tempting to once again be kind of like, you're too young. What do you know? Your music's probably bad. And it's just silly. It's foolish. So anytime that I am introduced to a property that has like some ready-made playlists that I can tap into, I am always so appreciative. This is also how I felt with the Spider-Verse movie, because that just straight up, again, tons of bangers. So this had the lyrics along with it, and also like because I watch with subtitles a lot of the time, and it tells you the artist before the song starts playing, which is very, very helpful. Although I am certain if I just went and looked for like the Heartstopper playlist, I would find stuff. I'm not going to do that because there's also potential for spoilers in that. So we start off hanging around Charlie, who is our main character for right now. And I'm going to assume Charlie is the main character. There's still a possibility this is only 1 episode, that we'll jump to another episode and we'll be with somebody else. And I don't think they're doing that just because it's only 8 episodes long, but who knows? And Charlie is getting texts from somebody named Ben, who is saying, "Can't wait to see you." And Charlie is so precious. He has these giant eyes and this very like narrow sort of high cheekboned face, curly hair that's like in a mop on the top of his head, and these eyebrows. It's like almost a unibrow, just misses, but eyebrows are so in right now, and he just looks very on trend. And he is very thin and has a sort of sprightly look. Like he looks a little elfin to me. And I want to give this actor a lot of credit for how he gets across that breathless excitement that comes along with your early days of being in something new in terms of relationships. It is tempting, and I'm using that word a lot today, but again, I'm an old, so it's, I have to be on the watch for this, to say that it's like this when you're young, but honestly, it's like this when you're in a new relationship, no matter how old you are. If you have good chemistry with somebody, that feeling of just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It doesn't matter how old you are. I had this with Owen, it was just like, and I miss it sometimes so much. And that's a thing that can happen, is you get sort of addicted to that feeling. And then when it inevitably begins to wane, as you get to know somebody and things grow more comfortable, you start to be like, and you just have to learn to kind of try and cultivate it. But Cindy says, I may have written a fanfic where he's a fairy prince, because he totally has that look. He really does. Cloak says there's always a bit of giddiness. That's such a good word. Giddiness. Very good. Thank you, Cloak. So he's just really, really good at getting across that eagerness and excitement. And so he's going to the library, and he walks in, looks around, says Ben, clearly expecting somebody to be there. And then he pulls his phone out, and there is a message, and all of the messages on this are through Instagram, which I find really fascinating, because first of all, I find Messenger and Instagram extremely annoying to use. So I can't imagine that being my main form of communication. However, I really like this because then you don't have to actually exchange phone numbers with people. And you don't have to give them information that you can't take back. They have access to your Instagram account, but you can block them, or you can delete your account, and you have a little bit more control over how they see you. And it also means that if you have a public Instagram account, literally anybody can get in touch with you. And that sort of equalizes things in a way that's a little simpler than the very loaded, can I get your number, which was the way it was for me. And we didn't even have cell phones yet. Like, they were really not a thing when I was in high school. It wasn't until college that it was much more the norm that everybody had them. And so that already, I'm like, this is a different world than what I'm used to. I know also Snapchat had been pretty popular for this, but I don't know if it still is. And there's another like Messenger specific app, and I can't remember what it's called, but I think it might be WhatsApp. But those are allegedly the ones that people use much more than texting, which also makes sense, because if you're texting and some of you don't have like an iPhone, Messenger can get really clunky, like just using texting. So if you've got a unified app that everybody's using, you all have the same capabilities, and that makes it a little bit more streamlined. So anyway, I just really like the fact that he was getting this from Instagram. I at first thought was because he is like kind of hiding this relationship, but I began to realize this is just the way they're communicating. Also, it says gay panic on his screen, like background is what it says. And I found that really hilarious. That's literally all it says. It's just gay panic. And I was like, all right, why not? So Ben is texting him, actually, can we meet up at break instead? And you can see how disappointed he is here to have been let down right when he's arriving. Like, you know, he's already here and being told that there's, oh, actually we're rescheduling and I didn't bother to let you know, which it becomes very clear how much it is totally on Ben's terms a little bit later. So he comes into his, so I want to ask, and I don't know if anybody here knows how this works, has either looked it up or is from the UK and understands how this is. But we have the headmaster, who I think is Stephen Fry. I think I recognize his voice, saying there'll now be students from all school years in your new form groups. Hope you enjoy getting to know some fresh faces in registration each day. I am assuming form groups is sort of like homeroom, which we had in high school, and you would be assigned a homeroom, but other than coming in at the beginning of the day and getting checked for attendance, homeroom had nothing to do with almost anything. Like, you barely met people who were in your homeroom. You were in there for like max 10 minutes, and usually a lot of that was in silence because there were announcements or the teacher was talking to you or whatever. So that's what I thought this was. But yeah, so the teacher who greets him says, "Come to join Hamlet House," which is that like the name of the form room, I guess. So the teacher says, "Okay, yeah, you're sitting there next to Nicholas." Is it Nicholas Nicholson? Please tell me this poor kid isn't named Nicholas Nicholson. Hold on, I'm looking at this over there. Nicholas Nelson. Okay, Christ's sake. He's in year 11, so only 1 year older than you. One of the rugby boys, too, I think. I'm sure you'll get along swimmingly. Or you can just sit in silence for the rest of the year. It really doesn't affect me in any way whatsoever. And when he says one of the rugby boys, you can see Charlie tense up terribly right away. He immediately reacts with like, oh, shit. Like, understandably. We find out later, I wasn't even blaming him to begin with, but we find out later that some of the rugby guys bullied him the previous year. So that gives even more reason for him to be very anxious about this. But at this moment, I just thought he was like, these assholes, which I really could have pardoned even without an explanation. And when we get like the gesture to Nicholas Nelson, there's somebody sort of standing in front of him, so you only see like his torso. And it isn't until he begins walking over that Charlie gets a good look at him, and he looks up and he's this very like ruddy faced, he looks like the kind of boy who has like several dogs, and his father is like getting him ready to go hunting, and he just looks like the sports type. He's got sort of auburn hair combed to one side and a really good-natured, open sort of face. And Charlie sits next to him and says hi, and it's very clear that he's having a moment. Like, a part of me wanted to be like, Charlie, baby, you need to tone it down. I get it. I definitely get it. But you have got to put a bit of a lid on it, because you are about to explode, my friend. And it's, like, the thing that I kept thinking of here was how, because the way he reacts is that he has never seen or met this kid before in his life. And I'm assuming we could go with it's for the show, or that this is a big school and you just don't know everybody. I had a fairly small school, so even if I were put with kids from another grade, there's nobody that I wouldn't recognize. I would have known everybody already. That's the nature of how small my school was. But it seems like they have never set eyes on each other before. So yeah, as he's sitting there, we get this graphic of leaves swirling around him like fall leaves. And I think this is meant to be a sort of symbol of like magical happenings. Oh, my heart is fluttering kind of thing. And later on, we get those swirling around Nicholas's face. And I was like, oh shit, is he having the feelings? But we'll get there. So we cut from there to him going into the music room. And that's where Ben is. And he says, I have missed your face so much. Now, Ben's attractive. Like, I was like, I see it. I definitely get it. It's weird because they all look like practically infants to me because they're so young, but also you can like understand, you know what I'm saying? And he asks Ben, did you have a good Christmas? Ben says it was all right and he asks Charlie, but in a like very perfunctory way. Charlie begins to actually answer and Ben cuts him off, kissing him. Now, this is one of those things where you could take it as, oh, I missed you so much. I can't wait to kiss you. I have to, even though you're talking, because I am so into you. But what it comes across as is, I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to do what I feel like. Who cares about your Christmas? I asked because I had to, because you asked first, or else I wouldn't have bothered, is really the way it feels. And you can tell because he backs off and says, you're so cute. Charlie is trying to take it the first way, but in his gut knows it's the second way. So the bell rings and Ben, very revealingly to my mind, wipes his mouth in a way that I was like, what does that mean, sir? Like, you know? Also, Ben, get some chapstick because, my friend, you are chapped. It's bad. And he leaves and literally Charlie is just standing there watching him go. He doesn't there's no glance back over his shoulder to even indicate he's considering Charlie at that moment. It's just over, done, you know? So then we get a montage of Charlie and Nicholas running into each other in the hallways over and over. Every time it happens, Charlie keeps looking over his shoulder at him and just smiling. Nicholas is very friendly. There's nothing about him that's seeming like he's not encouraging being friends, but he does not have that glow that Charlie has about it. And then we get this moment where he's doing his homework on the way to his lesson. Charlie says that that's chaotic, to which Nicholas says, you're making me sound cooler than I am. And he's looking at something and kind of pauses. Charlie offers to do it for him. And he says, well, no, then I won't learn. And I loved that he said that and seemed genuinely, completely sincere. And Charlie says, if you're stuck, let me just, and he starts to take his pen away. And I was like, Charlie, sir, again, you have got to cool it. You are overeager. Just relax. But then it turns into something adorable where he gets a mark of pen on his hand and Nicholas takes his hand and puts two eyes on it to make a little smile face. And it's, again, darling. It's just darling. So at this point, we get the fucking moment that made me want to break a face. You guys. He's walking past Ben in the hall. And he just says, hey. And Ben says, what? Hi, just said hi. Why are you talking to me? I don't know who you are. Honestly, Ben, I get that you're hiding, but you are making this so much weirder than it needed to be. Like, if you want to be casual about it and make it like nobody's gonna stop and take note of this, just be like, oh hey man, and just let it go. Like, you just be cool about it. But you had to make it into this issue which draws all kinds of attention to it, and it's just also such an ugly thing to do. So poor Charlie, he looks fucking shattered here. It's awful. And then Ben just like glances over at Nicholas and is like, you all right, mate? And Nicholas says, yeah, I'm all right. And does not seem to get what just happened. He's like clearly feeling, why are you being an asshole? But he doesn't get the situation enough to say anything. So Charlie says, so are you friends with Ben? He says, yeah, he's in my year. We hang out sometimes. And Charlie just says, oh, and seems really unsure what to do with that information, honestly. It's like he doesn't know what to think. So this is when we cut to lunchtime. And there's two people at the table with Charlie. Now, I don't know whether or not they both have male pronouns. I don't know what their names are either. So I'm like looking and seeing whether or not I can. His name is Tao, right? Isaac. Thank you, Cindy. And Tao is frustrated. I said I don't know what the pronouns are and immediately started using male pronouns. Ugh, so tiresome. But Tao is really upset because apparently there had been another member of their party named Elle who normally would eat with them at this time. And Tao always gets a drink for her. And even though she has switched to an all-girls school, he is still getting her a drink. And apparently, okay, both he, him, thank you, Cindy. This is what he also did yesterday. And I think he says a day before that. So this has been several days and he's just like, I just keep forgetting. And he seems so wistful. And says it is better that she's at an all-girls school. Mr. Reed was still refusing to call her Elle. And apparently Mr. Reed, who I don't remember if we even hear any of the teachers' names, to be honest, but he is a massive transphobe, is what Charlie says. And now that we're here, I just want to forgive me because you know how it is when you find out that somebody is problematic, and because there's an everlasting deluge every single week of new problematic shit that people you otherwise like have done or said, some of which is old, some of which is new, you lose track of the details of what it was, and all you do is retain whatever they said was racist, whatever they said was vaguely homophobic, whatever they said was vaguely transphobic, and you just don't remember anything beyond that because why bother remembering the details? All you need to know is that you don't like the direction that went. That's where I'm at with Stephen Fry, where I remember him being really kind of gross in some comments that he made that I believe were transphobic. And so hearing his voice in this show was genuinely kind of surprising to me, but we'll see what happens with that. So, Dow was saying 4 was a group, but 3 is just not quite enough to be a valid group. And it's very obvious Dow has a crush on Elle. It's painfully clear. And it seems like he does not know what to do with that, which I could understand if Dow is straight and this friend had been identifying as male up until, maybe a couple years ago or something. It takes some adjustment to then be like, wait, hold on. Am I straight? Is that you have to sort of reevaluate your own sexuality, which can get very confusing because everything, we all appreciate having labels, as much as people can be like, oh, I'm not into that. I think it can feel comforting to be able to say I am this and really know that. So it's not even the feeling of I don't want to be XYZ. It's am I that? Should I call myself that? I'm not even certain, And so I really get the impression that Dow is just sort of struggling with the change in the nature of their relationship now, because he clearly has feelings for her and isn't pursuing it either because he doesn't want to ruin the friendship or because he doesn't know if maybe she is ready for that. Because that can also be a factor if a a friend is like adjusting to presenting to the world in a whole new way, that's a lot on its own. And maybe you don't want to add relationship drama to all of that, you know? So anyway, you see later him watching, like, I think I don't know if it's the all girls school is like letting out right across from theirs, or if it's them getting off a bus or what, but there is a crowd of girls and he sees Elle and they don't greet each other and he doesn't go over to her and then she's gone. And I was sort of like, why didn't you just go talk to her? Because he texts her at the table here. And so it's obvious that they are chatting, but it's apparently you're not supposed to have your phone at school, at least at her school. So I don't know if maybe she stopped replying and he felt like, oh, was she mad or what? But Cindy says the schools are across the street from each other. Okay, cool. It's so wild. I can't imagine going to an all-girls school. Like, and I don't mean this in a bad or a good way. It would have just been such a completely different experience that it would recontextualize literally everything I did, because I was boy crazy in high school, like out of control. And if I did not have access to boys, what would I have done? I feel like I would have lost my mind. Anyway, so Dow is a little bit too observant here. And he sees Charlie watching Nicholas. King Nick Nelson is what he calls him. He says the one that looks like a golden retriever. And Charlie's like, he doesn't. And then he's like, all right, he does. And it's really obvious, this crush that he has. And then we get a couple of very adorable moments where Nick comes up to him and says, Charlie, you don't have a tissue, do you? And his hands are blue and he's got a blue spatter on his shirt. And they are in the bathroom trying to wash it up because his pen exploded and it won't come off. And he says, Charlie tells him, you can make it the new school fashion, which if he is like a popular guy, he probably could. And Charlie says, why should I be careful? And he says, look at them and look at us. We're a trio of borderline outcasts, and he's the star of the rugby team. And yeah, you can see like this is a free period, and those dudes are just like tackling each other. That's all they're doing over there. It's very physical. While these dudes are over here just chilling, having their lunch, chatting. It's a completely different energy. And Charlie says, I know what happened with those guys last year, but he's different. He's really nice. And now, justifiably says, I bet he's a totally different person when he's with his bro dude friends. A lot of people are like that. So I can understand cautioning your friend if they have been hurt before by people of a particular group. You want to watch out for them, you know, like I'm not mad at that at all. So this is when he starts texting Elle about how I have news from Truum, and tells her about how Charlie is into this other guy. And she, I really just want to mention, is sitting there with the exact same apple juice that Dow bought her at her lunch spot, which is very cute. And when she's sitting there, she's on her phone, and it's understandable because she's got nobody sitting at the table with her. She's putting a good face on it as much as she can. He asks her, how's it going? Are you making new friends? And she is saying that Higgs is better than Truum. And I'm like, oh, good. But then she follows it up with, no one's chucked a sandwich across the cafeteria all week, which I am assuming was some kind of bullying or harassment in her direction that she was dealing with. It may not have been. Maybe she's just talking about, in general, you hoodlums over there don't know how to act, which is totally fine. But it could have been about, because they're all saying like it's better that she's there. That leads me to believe shit was not great. And so I'm like, well, that's cool. But when he says made any new friends, we get her looking side to side and she's totally alone. But then she writes, yeah, everyone's really nice. And I felt for her being like very positive, trying to put a good face on it when she's clearly lonely. And I just hate the fact that this teacher comes up and is like, is that a phone? Just because you're new, I can't make exceptions. I understand. Look, in practice, not letting kids have their phones while they're in school makes complete sense. I am not trying to argue that. But she is so alone that not even having a phone just feels really cruel, you know? And so I understand the teacher being like, I can't make an exception just because you're new. It felt like the subtext there was, I can't make an exception just because you don't have any friends. And not in a cruel way, but more like I'm acknowledging that this sucks, but I have to do what I have to do. And I just hated this for her, because now what? You've got no armor at all. You've got to get a book or something to make it look like, you know? And it's unclear to me how many people here are aware that she's trans, if that's like an issue at the school, or if that's not a factor at all, if it's simply the fact that she's new and hasn't had time to make new friends, or is it that she herself has trouble putting herself out there because this is a completely different world and that is going to take some adjustment. And, you know, it also, if you switch, it's when the show starts, one of the teachers says to Charlie, like, Happy New Year. So I'm taking it as we're like halfway through the school year and she switched to a different school halfway through, that she did one term at the other and then moved here. And if you are coming into a school halfway through the year, there are cliques already and people have their friend groups, and adding another person is a lot harder than it is at the very start of the year when everything is still sort of loose. That's not to say people don't have their friends over the summer and stuff, but it's different. You know, you are all getting put into certain classes together and maybe folks aren't in the same classes as their friends, and you could have paired up and become friends because you both happen to have biology together. But if you're halfway through the year, everybody's got their biology partner, you know, it's just much more difficult. So anyway, I just really felt for her because she's trying to be positive, clearly, but she just seems so alone. And that's really the only look that we get at Elle until later when we get out of school, and that brief moment where her and Dow are sort of almost looking for each other, but I can't tell if they are avoiding like seeing each other in person or if they just sort of miss one another. And then we go over to Charlie, and he has come to the library to meet Ben again. And Ben apologizes for ignoring him yesterday. And Charlie says, yeah, but doesn't really kiss Ben back. It seems like he lets himself be sort of talked into it, but he isn't happy. And he is already aware, I don't like where this is going. This is not for me. So we cut to him hiding in the art room, which honestly, this art classroom is dope. Like, so superior to the classrooms that I had art in, I swear to God. And there is a teacher here. It's a black man who is also gay. We know this both because he's wearing a rainbow pin, although that could just be an ally thing, but Charlie straight up says it to him. So that's why he's feeling comfortable, like, confiding in him. And he is telling him, I'm not hiding, even though that's 100% what is happening. And then he says, all right, well, there is someone. And I love this teacher. He sets his pen to the side and says, a bully. And there's a real sort of like, who do I need to fucking check? Like, he is ready. This is a man who has dealt with this shit and he is about to do it whenever he needs doing, and there's no question. It's just, and I was just loving this energy so much. Cindy is saying Mr. Ajayi. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ajayi. But he, at first it sounds good because like Charlie's like, oh, there is somebody, I have a boyfriend. But when he says congratulations, Charlie says, so the thing is, I don't know if he even thinks of me as a boyfriend. Like, I don't know if that's even what we are. He ignores me sometimes. He doesn't like people even seeing us talk in corridors. And the teacher is going, well, have you talked to him about this? It sounds like you need to work this out with him. And do you want to break up with him? And Charlie says, I don't know. And when he says, have you talked to your friends about it? Charlie says they wouldn't get it. Why not? Because they're not gay. And I really wonder if that's true. Like, to a point, certainly. But also, there does just come a point where it's like about respect. And that's just like the base level. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like the hiding, there could be many reasons why even a straight person would not want everybody to know that they are with somebody that are valid. Even if they are riddled with problems, it would be understandable. But even within that, there's a way to be discreet without being rude and mean. But I understand to a point, just feeling like, so then we have Charlie, and he is heading out. He's like catch sight of Nick, who is just tossing a rugby ball in a way that feels so funny, because rugby is something that, as an American, I always mentally compare to football. And I know they're not the same sport, but they do have some similarities. But every time I see somebody tossing a rugby ball like underhand, it's so wrong. Like, we just don't do that for football. So when I see him tossing this, I was like, what are you doing? I know that's how you play it, but it seems like it shouldn't be. So he comes outside and he spots Ben with a girl. She's at the gate, which is apparently at lunch. If you have a girlfriend at the other school, you meet up at the front gates, which makes sense. And this is also why Charlie does not know about it yet. So then we have him at home struggling to decide what to text him. At first, do you have a girlfriend? Just straight up asking. Then, I hate you, with about 13 exclamation points. And then he deletes that. And finally, he just writes, I don't want to meet up anymore. And he just sends it. I was so proud of him. Can I just say that I thought this was going to drag on a lot longer than it does? And I was so pleased. Ben just replies with a bunch of question marks. And there was something about the fact that he replies that way that just said everything. You know what I'm saying? And this is the sort of thing that I think back on. And, it was obviously a really different dynamic when I was dating in high school, because we didn't have this type of communication. The closest we had was Instant Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger. And there were so many moments like this where there was like a pink flag, I'm going to say, not quite strong enough to be a red flag, but enough of a wishy-washiness in the response that I knew something was up and then ignored it. And then later on, I like dragged everything out because I refused to really see what was in front of me. And this series of question marks, and then I don't understand question mark, question mark, question mark, which it's all about why are you doing this instead of I am going to be sorry not to see you anymore. He's framing everything in such a way that it's like, I can't believe you, instead of I am going to miss you. You know, there's just a whole feel to it that I was like, yeah, see, he doesn't care about you. Then for fuck's sake, we're not going to get caught. And I was like, well, even if you were, isn't he out? Why would he care? Which is exactly what Charlie says to him later. I'm not worried about being caught. Everybody knows I'm gay. Who cares? So I appreciated that. Like, he's projecting this thing onto Charlie that is not there. And it doesn't even make logical sense. Simply because he doesn't want to face his own feelings, you know? So we cut to next morning. Charlie's in the kitchen just fucking around with some cornflakes and not really like, you know, it's like he's contemplating eventually eating them, but he doesn't actually plan on it anytime soon. And I was just sort of like, you can't do that with cornflakes, Charlie. You got to decide. You got to make up your mind right now, buddy. You're going to eat those or you're going to toss them down the drain, because either way, they're going to be mush. And he gets startled by, I believe, his sister, named Tori. This actress looks so familiar, and I cannot figure out where I know her from. And I'm trying to decide if this is her hair or if she's wearing a wig, because her hair looks very wig-like, but it may just be the cut. And when he says that he broke up with his boyfriend and she asks if he was a knob, he says yes. And she says, well done then. So they're on their bus on the way to school, and she's asking what kind of guy would he want to go out with. And she wants to get a feel for the personality type, but all he wants is somebody who enjoys being with him and who is kind and funny that he can just like chill with. And he is not trying to be too specific. He's like, I can't be that choosy. And I was sort of like, you are adorable. And yes, you can be that choosy, Charlie. Oh my God. He's like a baby Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is a kid that in 15, 20 years, I bet is going to be just ridiculous looking. But yeah, so I just really appreciated the openness of their relationship. And the bus pulls up. We have him like gazing through the misty window at Nick. And then he's doing track. He's like in gym class and fucking smoking everybody in that class. They are not even close. Everybody who is like closest behind him is probably like 5 or 6 yards back. It's honestly super impressive. And as somebody who was not a runner in school, even when I was in my best shape of my life, running was not it, kids. It was simply not. I could not help but be impressed. Cindy says it was a wig season 1, but she grew it out and it's her real hair in season 2. Interesting. I wonder why. Do you know, like, why they didn't want her to just wear her regular hair in season 1? Maybe they wanted them both to have black hair, so it made them look related, and she's got blonde hair or something. But it's just sort of, it's a little distracting because I felt like it looked like a wig. I can have very bad wigdar, though. It's a real on and off thing. And then there are times where it's like, well, that's clearly a wig, but I don't think it's not meant to look like a wig. Like, I believe Elle's hair is a wig, a lace front, but it just looks like a black woman's lace front wig. So I'm not, that's not something to remark upon. But anyway, Cindy says Tori's hair is very specific / important to her character. Okay, cool. Noted. So we see Nick looking over and seeing how Charlie is absolutely booking it. And you can see him kind of going, well, shit. And he gets this sort of expression on his face. And next thing we know, he's asking Charlie to join the rugby team. And Charlie is like, dude, I am very thin and weak. Are you sure? And he's like, I saw how fast you ran. And we don't even need somebody who can be on the main team. If we want to compete, we just need reserves. So that's what he's asking him for. But before he asks, Charlie has a moment where the whole screen turns pink and there's little flower petals floating around him. It's very anime. Charlie, I wanted to tell you that I'm gay too. And I'm in love with you. And I want to go out with you. And I want to be together forever. And it's just this really like earnest, you know, and then it cuts to, do you want to join the rugby team? And you can see Charlie just being like, what? And Charlie agrees to give it a try. He says, I can teach you how to play. And there's a part of me that was immediately like, Charlie, you're not going to get any better, my friend, in terms of one-on-one time and physical contact than your crush teaching you how to play rugby. You had better not say no, because for fuck's sake, Christ, you know, this is like, it's just, it could not be better. So, this is, yeah. So he says, so do you want to join? And there's a long pause and we cut to Charlie talking to his friends. And he says, I don't fall for just any guy who's nice to me. And Isaac and Dow exchange a look. I just want to mention that in this episode, Isaac does not speak at all. There's just kind of smirk scales. There's no speaking. He's very expressive in his face, but he does not have dialogue. I'm curious whether that will be something that's ongoing or what. But I loved the look that they gave him and how immediately Charlie's like, all right. So Dow says, okay, you want to spend an hour with giant moronic rugby lads? It's your funeral. And we then have Charlie walking to the locker room and he can overhear the boys talking about him. They're first discussing that he's skinny. Can he even play? He's a nice guy, but like, we want our team to actually be decent. Does he even like sports? Everyone knows he's gay. I really appreciate that there's not any use of slurs and that they're like being homophobic in that if you're gay, you don't like sports way, but they're not being homophobic in like, we don't want him in the locker room with us sort of way. That's not an issue. And it doesn't seem like it's ever an issue, which, oh my God, how refreshing that that's not a whole fucking thing, you know? They do seem mad awkward when he walks in though, because see, they were just talking about him and they have to assume that he heard them. Like, you know, they're in this locker room enough to know how much sound probably travels down that hallway. So Charlie is watching all of them play and he says, I know I was joking about being weak, but I am definitely too weak for this. So Nick says, all right, tackle me. I'm not going to dodge. Just come at me. And Charlie comes and fucking tackles him. It's for real. He goes down and he says, that was perfect. And I was like, look at you. You fucking did it, bro. Like, I didn't know if he was going to be able to pull it off. And he says, okay, let's try it while I'm actually moving. And I love it. Charlie just says, I'm going to die. So we have a sort of montage of him coming into the locker room. And it seems like every time he comes in, he has a bit of a moment of like, am I really here? Is this happening? And we see the team like huddled up and he's not part of the huddle when it's happening. But then we have a couple of moments where it seems like he is becoming more a part of things. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. It's like, I was worried that it was going to be an ongoing montage of him being left out. And we were just going to see that like, it is not happening. And maybe Nick is going to have to intervene somehow and be like, hey guys, we got to make him part of the team. We're a team. You know what I mean? And it's no, eventually he is in there with them in the huddle, and they're clapping for him and like psyching him up. And it's really nice. Like, I was just so happy for him that it seems like he's found a place to belong. Even if he doesn't feel like he really belongs, at least they're welcoming him now. And it just took some time and some effort. And I love the next time we see him and Dow talking, they're walking past and going, hey, mate, come on, we've got practice. And they're just, you know, very much like looping him in. And Dow doesn't try and give him a hard time. He just says, don't die. So, yeah, it's maybe not ideal, this sport for him. I don't know. You know, we haven't seen him do an actual game yet. But it feels like it's helping with his sense of confidence and being part of things, which is nice. I'm watching the scene now with Dow and Elle, and I can't tell. I feel like he didn't see her. I don't know. It looked like he was looking for her, but it also looked like she was looking for him. I don't know how they missed one another. I don't know. So we have the like practice where Charlie is running away from Nick and Nick tackles him, and we've got the leaves blowing around Nick at this point. This is a part where I was really kind of like, this is, I mean, Charlie is certainly, it's around him as well, but it's around Nick, and the way Nick is looking at Charlie, there's just a whole vibe. And then we have the scene where Ben texts him, meet me at the music block after practice. He says, why? And Ben just says, I just want to talk. So Charlie agrees to come. The way this is filmed is really well done. Like, we see him walking to that section of the school and Nick behind him watching him. And there's sort of a sense of him being able to tell something's a little bit off. Like, why is he going to the building instead of heading out? Just an intuition that I feel like is admirable. And Nick, he meets Ben, and it's like this really gross. I was, again, so proud of Charlie. Did I say Nick meets Ben? I meant Charlie meets Ben. I don't know. But he really stands up for himself here. And like, says things in an extremely direct and mature way. So Ben comes up and tries to touch him. And he says, don't touch me. I said I don't want to meet up anymore. And Ben says, yeah, and I don't believe you. You're clearly just scared of getting caught. And this is when Charlie is just like, what do you even mean? That doesn't make any sense. You're the one who's scared of getting caught. You can't even look at me when other people are around. Not to mention the fact that you have a girlfriend. I saw you with her at the school gate. Thanks for telling me. Oh, wait, you didn't. And Ben says, don't be angry at me for not wanting to come out yet. Which, sir, come now. Like, it's the sort of thing that, as a high schooler, I can believe that Ben believes what he's saying. But as an adult looking at this, it's so obvious that he is using Ben, or using Charlie, to experiment with, and is not seeing him as like a full person. So I can understand where he's at mentally, but it's really, really selfish. And Charlie is calling him out so rightfully. He says, I'm not angry about that. If you're figuring stuff out, fine. Take your time. I would have been there for you. Don't you think I, of all people, would have understood? I'm angry because you never even slightly cared about my feelings. We only meet up when you want to, where you want to, when you feel like kissing a boy. You don't care about me at all. And then Ben says, it's not like anyone else is going to go out with you, is it? Wow, Ben. once again, projecting. Ben, is it like anybody else is going to go out with you? Is it? You have a girlfriend, but if you're gay, that can't be doing much for you. So, I'm just saying, I'm rubber, you're glue. That's all. It just hits so hard, though. I hated this for Charlie. Ben is being such a dick, and I don't want him to be able to get under Charlie's skin, and he clearly does. So then Ben grabs him and shoves him against the wall and is like trying to kiss him, and Charlie is saying, don't. And Ben is saying, I know you like me. And I know that you want more, but I'm figuring stuff out. What more do you want from me? And Charlie is saying, stop. And clearly upset. And then, oh my God, you guys, Nick swoops in and just yanks him off him. He told you to stop. Go on, piss off. And I love this both because there is a real sense of you're fucking with my friend. But also, I like the fact that now somebody else knows about Ben. So there's almost a sense of leverage here. And I do not want to encourage blackmailing somebody about their sexuality. But because Ben is so fucking shady, I feel like you need to have leverage against a person like this. And the fact that Nick is in on what's going on here, and he apparently like heard the conversation, I just really like that he knows the full situation and what's going on here. And he's obviously like a little shook. He's looking at Charlie and is just like, are you okay? And there's no judgment. There's no like, you know, there's no weirdness about having found out that Ben is gay either. Like he doesn't throw it in his face, or he doesn't say like, wow, I didn't see that coming. There's nothing about that because it's not about Ben. He cares about Charlie. And he says it seemed like there was something up when we were getting changed, and I just wanted to check everything was okay. And you guys, he is so observant because he likes Charlie. Oh, really? You noticed that something was up? I bet there was somebody else in the locker room for which something also was up, but did you notice it with them? Because it seems like you probably didn't, because you're only watching one person. It seems like you're only watching one person, Nick. That's all I'm saying. And Charlie apologizes. He says, you have nothing to be sorry about. And he says, sorry again. And Nick says, you say sorry a lot. And Charlie starts to open his mouth. He says, don't say it. I kind of want to say it. This is genuinely funny. And he claps him on the shoulder and says, we should get out. And it was just a really nice moment. Somebody having Charlie's back. And it just in such an ugly spot, you know? So they walk out of there together. There's a moment of like, well, I'm this way. Well, I'm this way. And they part, but you can feel how happy, despite everything. That went so poorly with Ben. But because of how Nick had his back, Charlie is grinning. You know, it's just like straight up, I've forgotten about the Ben thing. Ben who? And it turns out Olivia, what's her face, is playing Nick's mom, which I am very, very excited about. I don't know what more she's going to do, but I'm stoked that she's here. Coleman, thank you, Cindy. He's in the car with her, and we see, I really enjoy, we see Charlie trying to decide what he's going to text Nick. And starting a couple of sentences and stopping and just getting really irritated with himself as he's waiting for the bus. And finally, we go back to the car with Nick and his mom. And his mom had like asked him how was practice, and he didn't answer. And finally, she gets him to respond, and he just says, yeah, it was normal. I love her going, okay, like, thanks for all of that information. And he's got kind of no expression. Then his phone dings, and he gets the message from Charlie that just says, thank you, X. And he gets that glowy little grin. He gets his little smile. And that's the end of the episode. And it was very exciting. I was very excited. It's promising. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. And I'm really curious. Like, that could be its own short. And that's it. And I would be happy with that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we've got 8 episodes, and I really don't know where we're going to go, but I'm super curious about it. So, yeah, I'm over time. Who would have thought it's only a half-hour episode? Cindy is just freaking out in the chat. So I'm going to wrap this up, but thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me. I'm really excited to be starting something new. And I got a message on Instagram because I'm trying to be a little bit more proactive with sharing when I'm recording stuff, because I forget how so many platforms do not show you information. So I really have to like post multiple times everywhere to get anybody to see jack shit that I'm posting. And somebody saw my Instagram story and messaged me and was like, oh my God, I didn't know you were covering this. I was like, I am not covering it yet. Today is day 1. So there are a lot of people out there who really enjoy this show and seemed excited to hang out and cover it. So, Cloak is asking when's next episode. Thursday, same time, I believe. Let me just triple check that. But I think that when Cindy booked them, she booked them all for 7 p.m. Central. Yes. So it'll be 7 on Thursday. Oh, which reminds me though, and Cindy, this is not the best time to ask you this, but the 21st, when we have another episode, I am actually going to be going to see Beyonce because I have amazing friends who got me tickets for a birthday present. So I'm going to have to reschedule that to the Wednesday before. So that's going to be the only time where it's not on a Thursday. So just FYI on that. But I'm just really excited. So I'll keep you guys all posted. There's one other episode that Cindy is trying to reschedule, and I think I'm going to be able to, but I'm not positive. So I'll keep you apprised. All right, everybody. Thank you again for hanging out. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.